After taking the antidote from the third king and the key from the room, King Elenpe made an attempt to go out and leave the palace. As he walked past the skeleton of the three kings, a door swing wide opened on the left side. Lo and behold, inside the room, he saw lots of gold and precious stones piled up in heaps all over the floor. He momentarily paused to look at them, but later he ignored them and made a move to proceed on his way. However, it was as if a voice whispered to him to take some. He then stopped abruptly when he was about to come out into the open and decided to go back. When he was by the entrance of the door, he stood for a while to take a look again. While relaying what happened to us, he said, in a way that he cannot explain, he just discovered that somehow he entered the room to pick some of the gold and the precious stones. As he was picking them up, the door suddenly closed with a very loud noise. To his uttermost amazement, right before his eyes, all the gold and precious stones that he has gathered, along with those that are on the floor, gradually turned to ordinary sand. Great disappointment flooded his heart because of his greed for lucre. He started feeling bad because he did not stick to the plans. Suddenly, fear gripped him as the thoughts of being forever trapped and never be able to go back to Ososaland flooded his mind. He quickly dashed for the door and tried to open the door, but after much trial, without success, the knob disappeared, and the door also disappeared. What was the entrance of the door got replaced gradually by a plain wall. When he looked around for windows or any other door, he discovered that he was inside a room without door or windows. As he was pacing about and pondering in what to do, a strange cold descended on the room, and the place suddenly went pitch dark. Afterwards, he started hearing strange voices, and at a point some big and strange-looking eyes appear in the room and started rolling all around him. It was very glaring to him that he was goofed, and at a point, when he did not know what to do anymore, he has to call the name of Anante with a loud voice. At the palace, I and Anante have just started reminiscing about the past, and she was blushing about some of my comments. Suddenly, she snapped out of our discussion and looked towards the hourglass, which suddenly started burning and giving off some very strange glow. Anante jumped up and said, "King Elenpe is in trouble. He has done something wrong, and he may never come back from the spirit world." She started pacing about, and within some seconds, light rays burst forth from her eyes. As I also got up wondering what was happening, she just got divided into 5 parts again as at before, and one of the 5 parts disappeared, leaving the 4 parts. The remaining 4 then came back together, and her body started glowing just as it was before. Some seconds later, she suddenly fell down on the floor. I was really scared, and I made a move to reach out and raise her up, but I stopped abruptly. Fear suddenly gripped me, because I did not know what will happen to me if I touched her glowing body. Out there in the spirit realm of Oblafa, Anante went through the midst of the 6 witches like lightning, and before they recovered, she has gone very far. Eventually, she reached the palace of the 3 kings and suddenly appeared in the pitch-dark room where King Elenpe was. When she entered, her glowing body lightened the room, and the strange eyes immediately disappeared. She then looked at King Elenpe angrily and said, "Your Highness, but I warned you to abide by what I told you." King Elenpe looked very sorry, but Anante quickly told him to open the door and go out. The king moved towards the door, and both the door and the knob appeared again. He then quickly rushed out of the room and head towards the open palace area. When he came out in the open, the wind came immediately and relocate her as Anante told him before he came. Immediately the king left the dark room. Anante's 5th part was also transported back to the palace, and the 5th part merged with the body on the floor. For some minutes, she just laid there looking very sick. That body also stopped glowing. About 5 minutes later, we started hearing the voice of King Elenpe again, repeatedly calling on the name on Anante. Apparently, he had an encounter with the snake. He was very careful this time around, and he did all he was meant to do. What is left now is for Anante to touch the hourglass so that he can appear again at the palace with the key and the antidote. Anante tried to get up from the floor, but she could not. I was about moving close to her, in order to lift her up, when she slowly raised her head and told me in a very weak voice that I should not touch her. She said that by going to help King Elenpe, the venom of the strange serpent that bite the first king has entered her too, and that if I touch her, the snake venom will enter my body too. I screamed after hearing this. She continued by saying that it's only the antidote that the king is bringing that can save her. The matter is now very complicated. The king cannot come back without her touching the hourglass, and she is too weak to get up and help the king get back. If she does not take the antidote, she may die, and definitely the king may die in Oblafa if the spiritual door for him to return back is not opened by Anante. What will be my lot? I said within me. Definitely it will be death, because I will be accused of killing Anante and making the king to disappear. No one will ever believe that I am innocent. Since Anante was too weak to get up and the cry of her name was repeatedly coming from the hourglass, indicating that the king has been calling her, so she can touch the hourglass as agreed on earlier, I decided to take an expensive decision. I turned to Anante and professed my love to her. I also let her know that I was going to ask her to marry me before the slave traders kidnapped us. I went further to say that I will rather die than to see her dead. Immediately after saying this, I reached out to touch her body, and in split seconds, it was as if hundreds of snakes gave me a bite at the same time from my head to my toe. This was accompanied by an excruciating pain and great weakness. Not minding the excruciating pain and the weakness, I carried Anante towards the hourglass and managed to get her hand to touch the hourglass. Immediately after doing this, a mist appeared and King Elenpe emerged with the antidote and the key. Anante subsequently passed out. Out of great weakness, I told the king about what happened to both of us and the need for the antidote. After telling him, my mouth suddenly became too heavy for me to utter any word, and with time, everywhere went pitch dark. By the time I opened my eyes, I observed that I was on a bed in a different room. Anante was by my bed, looking pretty as ever. She smiled at me and said, "Lover boy, you're awake." I laughed too, because I was happy to see her alive and be alive too. Subsequently, I tried to get up, but a strong headache kept me back from doing so. "What happened?" I asked her. "I remembered that you passed out, and after picking you up, I was affected too, and much later everywhere became dark." She smiled and said it was the king that gave both of us the antidote, and he had to take it too just before he too passed out because the snake venom entered his body too. "I hope he's alright," I asked. "Yes, he is," she said. Immediately the king came smiling and gaily dressed. He praised me immediately for what he termed my heroic intervention. Without wasting time, he said next, "Now we have all the elements. How do we use them to ensure that my lineage does not cease to exist, as I saw in the two dreams?" I looked at Anante wondering if she has the answer, and she also looked at me too. We both end up smiling and looked at the king, who incidentally was staring at both of us.